Welcome back to the Real Life Momz podcast. This is a place where you can take a break from all your to-dos and take time to focus on yourself. I'm Lisa Foster, your host, and I am passionate about helping moms prioritize themselves. On this podcast, we discuss strategies to promote our mental, physical, and emotional well-being. And today we are connecting with our feelings, especially the ones we are ashamed of, including anger and hatred. And I am here with fellow mom, Bronwyn Schweigerdt. She is a psychotherapist and a podcast host of Angry at the Right Things. And she knows that even though feelings are invisible, they don't evaporate, but stored away in our bodies when they're disowned. So, hi, Bronwyn. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lisa.
I'm so excited to have you, as I feel like I had a little feelings coming up just even between work and here today. So I'm excited to see how this is all affecting our lives. But I have to ask, you have a podcast called Angry at the Right Things. And I mean, you got to know the question, like, what are the right things to be angry at?
Yeah. Oh, wow. No one's ever asked me that question. That's so good. Yeah. So I would say it really depends on the situation. Is there something that percolates in your mind when you ask that question?
Well, I mean, I guess I feel like anger it feels very negative. Like it's a negative emotion to me, right? And so when you say angry at the right things, I get this thought that like, oh, there is a right thing that to be angry at. Am I
Yeah.
out of the wrong realm
Yeah.
here?
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. So, and I'm glad you said it's a negative emotion. I think most humans see it as a negative emotion. But, first of all, we therapists will say the truth is there's no such thing as a good feeling or a bad feeling, a right feeling or a wrong feeling. We don't judge our feelings. Guess what? They're involuntary. So why would you judge them? What actually matters is how we act with those feelings, right? So anger does get associated with negativity because we see a lot of people being verbally violent, physically violent, doing stupid things with their anger, right? So people can make really poor choices when they're angry, yes. And I think that is kind of the notoriety that we all associate with anger, unfortunately. But, all humans experience anger. And honestly, I think we experience it a lot more than we are willing to let on or even admit. And when I say anger, I mean there's so many words for anger. So it could be irritation, it could be annoyance, it could be resentment, it could be, infuriating, like feeling infuriated. It could be disappointed because that is also a type of anger. It could be betrayed. And feelings, the reason why they're not right or wrong or even good or bad is they are a reflection of a truth. And the truth is when we feel anger or disappointment or betrayal or any of those things, it's reflecting there is something negative going on. But guess what? It is not my feeling of anger. The anger is kind of like a light on the emotional dashboard of my car saying, hey, check under the hood, something's off. So, when we see that light come up on the dashboard of our car, do we go, oh, that's so negative, I'm just going to ignore it because it's so negative and just see what happens because I don't want to see it? Well, I mean, maybe some people do, but hopefully most of us see the light on the dashboard of their actual car and go, I really need to check under the hood because something needs my attention. And that's exactly what our angry feelings are. They're there to say something needs resolution. It needs your attention. You need to work to bring about resolution to it. So if we don't do that, if we dissociate from those feelings and say, no, I'm fine, or we talk ourselves out of it, you shouldn't feel that way, Bronwyn. It's actually really positive. I'm sure, let's find the silver lining. If we do that to ourselves, we're dissociating from those feelings. And that's when they store up in our bodies because they don't go away. They really don't. And, I like to say anger is invisible, like all feelings are. But, I honestly think it's more real than the chair I'm sitting on right now. I think it is more real than the visible, practical, tangible things. And it doesn't go away. It stores up in our body and it haunts us for many, many years. I had insomnia, which is, by the way, gone. I absolutely believe that was my body being angry with me, trying to tell me, you need to cut off your relationship with your father because you're betraying yourself. I think I was feeling angry at me for betraying myself, and disassociating from that landed me with years of insomnia. I mean, really bad insomnia. I have clients who experience insomnia, but other people experience migraines. That's
Yeah.
anger. That's anger
Wow.
in your body. Some people experience GI issues. A lot of people get autoimmune disorders. Autoimmune is your own white blood cells are attacking your body. They are angry. They're
Mm.
inflamed. And when you say inflamed, I'm like, those are angry white blood cells. I believe so much autoimmune issues are anger that is just stored away in our bodies. But then also things like anxiety and depression are also disassociated anger in our bodies.
I love the idea of this like light check in the car that we should look under the hood and see where that anger is coming from. And so what I'm hearing is that if we either push down or ignore, dissociate, that this anger actually can manifest as other things stored in our body.
Oh, yeah. Would you like an example of that?
Yes, I would love that.
So, one of my podcast episodes, I talk a lot about my own relationship with my daughter, who's now 20, and we're doing great now. But for 14 years, I was her enemy. It was like she was a teenager for 14, since she was 5, basically. Around age 5, we moved and I fell into a horrific depression. And anyone who's ever been severely depressed, it's like you lose yourself. And she had only experienced my attunement, my full attunement, because she's my only child. And I was very connected to her. And when I lost myself, she felt rejected by me. Her name's Edie. So I say little Edie, little 5-year-old Edie felt rejected by mom. And you know what? She was not intentionally, but she was. It's like the lights were on, but nobody was home. And mom wasn't making eye contact anymore. Mom wasn't smiling. She had her own experience of the move, and mom didn't care because mom was lost inside herself. And so she, from that age on, all of a sudden, like so suddenly, started getting headaches and stomach aches like almost every day. And that was when I was still a nutritionist, is before that was my first, career. And I'm like, what could it be? What are we eating? Whatever. And well, she had those symptoms until like a year and a half ago, when I started as a therapist, I started connecting the dots because I would see them with my clients, and I would see them with, my clients as when they were children. And I started kind of seeing, oh, she has rejected me because she felt rejected by me. And that's why she's held me at arm's length for 14 years. And I wrote her a letter, and it was called Dear 5-Year-Old Edie. And I apologized. And I said, this is what I think you experienced back then. This is what I'm so sorry for. And you felt abandoned by me, and you've been angry ever since. And I don't blame you. And I apologized, and I just sent it to her. I didn't even follow up. So I'm like, okay. So, but that's when things started changing in our dynamic. And I even got to say at one point to her, I said, when you were 5, little Edie felt rejected by me. And what I want little Edie to know is that was 100% a mom problem and 0% an Edie problem. And like, when I said that, she was like, oh, wow, you're right. I always took that as personal, and you're right. You were depressed, and oh my God. And it just did something for her. So during that year and a half where we were I was winning back her trust, basically, as her parent, her headaches and stomach aches that persevered for 14 years completely stopped.
Wow.
And her anxiety, she had so much anxiety, it completely diminished.
That's incredible. I mean, that's such a great example of
Yeah.
how those feelings can really manifest as physical symptoms. And yeah, I agree. I think it happens so much more often than we think. And I see patients too. I'm a cranial psychotherapist and a physical therapist. And yes, there are so many times that clients come to my door and go to the doctor and they're like, I don't know, they're finding nothing wrong with me, but this is how I'm feeling. And you're right. So tell us a little bit more about this actual storing of the feeling in the tissue, in the body, being trapped in there. And maybe expanding into like, how are we able to release this? Because I'm sure people are listening going,
Yeah,
oh, I have all those feelings, however,
sure.
and I'm sure it's stored.
Yeah.
Like, how do we get it out of us?
Yeah. Well, I don't know exactly how it stores it physiologically.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have believed this when I was a nutritionist. I wouldn't have ever believed, I would have thought, oh, someone's making this up. And now it's like, oh, wow. Like I cannot deny it because I see it every single day. With my clients, I'm learning different feelings store in different parts of the body. And it's going to make intuitive sense to you and everyone who's listening, but it's crazy. Some of my clients have had eating disorders or disordered eating. And I noticed the ones who struggled with bulimia, our gut, our stomach is where we store disgust. Like when people say, oh, I feel sick to my stomach. I'm like, what made you feel disgust? And the other thing that we store in our stomach or our gut is shame. And I really think shame is also disgust. It's self-disgust. So I believe our uterus actually is where we feel the lack of nurture that we're getting. This sounds so like hocus pocus, honestly, but I really believe this. I believe like women with really severe premenstrual cramps, it's like their uterus is like, wait, how am I supposed to nurture someone when I am not getting the nurture that I need? Like I'm angry about that. It's almost like the uterus is just like angry. And I actually just had a client yesterday. This is crazy too. She was sharing how she just moved and unfortunately she lost her plants that she's had for many years, and those plants have been her one consistent source of nurture. Like she even said that, and she said, oh my god, while I'm talking I'm getting cramp. And she had been having cramps around the loss of these plants. They all died when she put them outside. She didn't realize how hot it was, and she's like, it's not my period but I'm cramping. And when she talked about how she loved those nurture.
And that's so interesting you're talking about. I haven't heard it like that, but once again, in the kind of manual therapy world, it is kind of known that like they'll say liver is where anger is stored, lungs are grief. And so there are organs that are kind of like known to actually hold these type of feelings. So I love that you went kind of looked at it even further and looked at your clients to see what kind of repetitively is happening in their bodies and coinciding with that. So we're talking about the storing in the body. Now, how do we either, I mean, I have two questions. Like, how do we prevent this from even happening if there are emotions? Or are there things that we could be doing as we're actually feeling the emotions in the moment?
Yeah,
So maybe let's start with that one.
absolutely. So when we feel something in the moment, we need to learn to self-attune. And the thing is, we parent ourselves the way we were parented. So there's a lot of unlearning we need to do and heal our relationship with ourselves. But that said, that sounds really like long and hard, and it's not. It's just saying, you know what, little Bronwyn, I am so sorry. I have abandoned you and dismissed your feelings for so long and even shamed you for your feelings, especially the angry feelings. I'm so sorry. And you know what? Let's start with the anger. I want to really heal my relationship with you, and I want to give you permission to feel it. Just feel it in your body, and I will listen and I will validate. And I'll just say, you know what? Yeah, you are angry, and that's okay to feel that. Of course it is, because someone just hurt you. So what do you need? Because our feelings tell us what we need. So when we start with like, I feel angry in my chest, and for a lot of people, that's just anxiety. But what I say is that's suppressed anger. You just say to yourself, no, no, little Lisa, you're angry and you have permission to be angry. Help me understand. I validate it. You have every right to feel that way. Help me understand. And what do you need? What does that anger need right now? And I, big Lisa, will help you, little Lisa, channel it out in a healthy way through boundaries, through assertiveness, or through some kind of accountability.
Yeah. Easier said than done in the moment. I'm even thinking like little things, right? I guess that's a question too. Do little things like I was on my way home from work today. I got a
Mm-hmm.
whole list texted to me from my family. I need this, but I only have like a very few minutes before I have to come home, do something else, and then jump on this, right? So I felt myself getting the word I had because I thought I was like, oh, good, I'm going to talk to you today. I was like, I felt resentful. Like,
Yeah.
I just felt like I was feeling resentful of this.
Well, that sounds like a good thing, Lisa. So let's do you right now. And those who are listening can like
Yeah,
see it at work. Because I do this in my podcast too for my co-host, Katie. She's my best friend. She's not a therapist. So I do this kind of exercises with her. But I think that's the best way for
to
people to
show it.
learn. So let's do
Great.
that with you, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So if you let yourself, and we can't feel it in our head. If you start to feel any kind of tension in your head, just say, hey, brain, you're amazing. I love you. Thank you for all your hard work. But right now, I need you to take a big break. This is just between me and my body, and I need to feel the resentment, the anger. So, where do you feel that in your body when you think of
Oh, I
that
can
today?
feel it right now. Just telling you again, it's in my chest. Like I'm just like, oh, right, right in my
Okay.
chest.
Okay. So, what does your chest want to say in fantasy to the main person or the person who represents the people?
It wants to say,
And
get it yourself.
yeah.
Like those are the first words that come to my head.
Okay. Okay. So, I'm going to add to this because maybe, and you can tell me if right or
Sure.
wrong or whatever. So, maybe your chest wants to say, I really resent that how busy I am and everything I have on my plate. And this is a pattern and it's still happening. And this is not a one-time event. And I really resent that this is still happening right now. It's like I don't matter.
Yeah, that feels actually, my chest is loosening as you're saying that. It's
Yeah.
so funny.
So you just say it. You don't have to say it to that person. And that's what I really want everyone to hear.
Yeah.
Because half the time, if not more, it would be counterproductive to actually do that. So when we're talking about parents, we're talking about like major betrayals, you do not want to actually say that to the person, but you can say it in fantasy. You could write a fantasy letter
Mm,
and you could say it to a friend who's a good listener. And all you need is for someone to attune to you and for you to attune to you and just go, I have every right to feel this. And this is what
hmm
I want to see in fantasy. And you externalize it. We use the word express, we express it, words express things. You are literally expressing it out of your body into the ether. And that's why I think your chest feels looser right
Yeah, I think that was really helpful. Is it important, like timing wise, to do it? Does it matter if I do it a day later or in the moment?
now. The sooner the better, because, it might affect your sleep. It might affect your interactions with your kids. If we don't express our anger in a healthy way, it will leak
It's going to
out.
come out.
It
You're
will
right.
leak out in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, that's where the snap would come in. And I'm going to be honest. I brought in these groceries. I was in a rush because I had to do something before coming on. And literally, I put them on the thing, and my husband so sweetly comes over and says something really nice. I'm like, I can't deal. I can't deal. And then next thing I know, that he tips over, like my energy affected him. He tips over this whole water that gets spilled all over the floor.
Yeah.
And then I just took a breath and I was like, okay, wait, I have time. I have a minute. I can do this.
Well,
And
yeah, but
so,
it does
yeah.
have that domino effect. So
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
what you're saying is right. So if we delay it, then it will leak out in a passive aggressive way with that person, or we'll be mean to the kids or whatever, or we'll cut someone off on the freeway. And that might be a very costly thing to do. So we really need to be responsible for our anger in the moment. And that is also not betraying ourselves because our inner child is now going to trust us more. So when we express it in fantasy, but then after we've expressed it in fantasy, we feel better. And then we can get to the husband and say, the non-fantasy version, say, this keeps happening and it's making me resentful and I'm not going to respond anymore. So that would be
hmm
the boundary or the assertiveness.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, yes, there were many times I could have put a boundary. But then there's feelings of guilt. Where does that fall in? The guilt.
Yeah. Why would you feel guilty for having a boundary?
I have been told that many times. I've had somebody literally say, Lisa, you just put a boundary. Why do you feel guilty? I don't know. That must come from somewhere.
Because I'm sure you're not the only woman or mother who feels guilt when she has a boundary, right? In fact, I'm being very sarcastic because I think you represent every woman. So we, again, we parent ourselves the way we were parented. So you're parenting little Lisa. You're like, that's wrong, little Lisa, to like have limits. That is wrong. You're a little robot, not a little human, little Lisa. It's not okay to say no. It's not okay to have a limit. And so we have to heal that relationship with ourselves. And so what I do with my clients is I lead people in integration exercises with their inner child, where we see our, like, we go to like an, what I call an imprint memory. And it can just be any memory that is kind of emblematic of where we were guilted for saying no, and we were guilted for being a human versus a robot. And we picture, let's say we picture 7-year-old Lisa, and she's being guilted for being human. And I would have you picture little Lisa, and you're talking to her, and mom and dad are fading in the background. It's just you and her, and you're making eye contact with her. You're getting on her level and looking her in the eyes and say, little Lisa, I see how guilty you feel for being human, for having a limit, for having needs, for being burdensome on others or inconvenient to others. And I want to let you know that the truth is, you're not a burden. You're not a burden to me. And you get to say no to me as much as you want, because I love that you're human. I love that about you. And I will honor and respect your natural human limitation from here on out. And I will meet your needs, and I will validate your feelings because they matter to me, and I will prioritize them. And I'm sorry I haven't done a good job of that. I'm sorry I've parented you the way we were parented, but that's changing today. And your anger matters to me. And I'm going to help us channel it out in healthy ways with no guilt. I'm going to help us trust ourselves because we matter too. And I need you to see that when you're guilted by your mom, I need you to see that that's a her problem, not a you problem. And you've won my approval, little Lisa. There's nothing left to win because you already have it, and you can't ever lose it. There's nothing you can do that can add to it or ever detract from it. And you belong to me. And so now you're free. We're free to disappoint the hell out of everyone else, because I will never leave you. I will never abandon you. I will never reject you. I'm here to stay.
Yeah. Wow. That is powerful now, isn't it? Now, I hear you doing that, for me, which feels amazing, by the way. I love you as big Lisa. But how do people do this themselves? It seems like you have to be good at like self-talk almost. What about people who aren't there yet?
Well, I think it starts with the self-attunement. So it could be as simple as you're driving home and you're feeling the anger. And instead of like ignoring it, instead of dismissing it, instead of minimizing it, you're going to say, you know what, Lisa, you have every right to feel resentful. And yeah, you feel it right in your chest. And that is exactly what you should feel right now. That's great. What do you need from me right now? Where does this anger need to go? How do we need to channel it out? And once you start developing that relationship with yourself, I think naturally you're going to start healing that relationship, and it's going to just grow, like relationships grow when they're healthy.
Yeah, that seems so much more doable. So what is it that you want moms to know that maybe you didn't know back then?
That's a great question. So I would say, on the episode where I talk about my own daughter, I think the episode is called How to Overcome Betrayal in the Best Way Possible, or something like that. Because I betrayed Edie, my daughter. But I talk about rupture and repair, which is something, certain kind of therapists will talk about. And the point is, we can't avoid rupture in any relationship. That's not realistic. That we're going to have rupture. If you've known someone a day or two, like there's going to be a rupture, especially when you live with them day in and day out. So we're going to fail our kids. We absolutely will. And there's no shame in that, because that's what humans do. We fail. The shame isn't from that, because we're human, what we need to do is have a really good repair. And that's what all the research, all the attachment theory shows, that actually, and maybe you'll like start to make this connection, but they show that the healthiest, strongest relationships in the world are ones, let's say just between two friends, where there's been a rupture, but there was a great repair. Because what that does is it teaches both parties, just kind of implicitly, this is a safe environment for us to be real and make mistakes and fail. And we're going to be honest and authentic afterwards and apologize. And that creates a safe environment for a child to grow up with a mother who says, you know what, little Johnny, I'm sorry that I yelled at you. Mommy was wrong to do that. And mommy's sorry. And she just wants you to know that that was a mistake. And what that does is it teaches Johnny that he matters, just implicitly. You can tell a child they matter. I don't think that lands for them. But if they matter because you're showing them by an apology, by saying, Johnny, you're right to be angry with me. I don't blame you for feeling angry. Then that teaches them they matter. When their feelings matter, they matter. So it's teaching him that, but it's also modeling for him, humans make mistakes, Johnny, and it's modeling that. And so little Johnny doesn't grow up to feel shame. Like when he makes a mistake, he is a mistake. He's not going to confuse those two things. He's not going to conflate those. He grows up like, okay, I made a mistake. Cool. And he'll even learn, we learn from our mistakes. He's going to learn all of that implicitly. Mom is creating a safe environment for him to make lots of mistakes. And you know what? How in the world are we supposed to grow in an environment where we can't make mistakes? Because in order to grow, you need to make tons of mistakes, and it needs to be a safe environment for that to happen. So there's just so much with a good repair, like having a relationship where when there's a rupture, we go first, we model that. We don't demand it of them until we model it for them. And that they're going to start naturally wanting to model it back or to do it back.
Yeah. And I think what I'm also hearing is this repair. I totally agree. I've had some friends that something has happened and we reconnected and made the repair. And yeah, those are like, there's so much more trust and strength in those because you've done that. You've gone through something. So I totally agree. That is really important. But I'm also kind of feeling that this is also a repair with yourself, right? With that inner little you and the big you. It's almost like that same thing, making that repair and connection, and that will really strengthen us too.
That is so true. Thank you for pointing that out. That is very true. And and that's the goal of therapy, should be integration, because integration means that we're whole and that what you see is what you get. Because when you think about, like, for people who remember math, an integral number, it's a whole number. And someone who's integrated, it also means complete. It means, I'm 53 now. I finally feel right now like I'm the same age on the inside as on the outside. And I did not feel that until, not too long ago, actually. I think in my 40s, I felt like I was in my late teens. I always felt kind of just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Everyone else seems to know. And now I'm like, oh, I know what I'm doing, and no one else does. That's the truth. But anyway, so integrated, it's whole, it's complete, it's mature. The word mature in Spanish is maduro, which means ripe, like ripe. Yeah. So that's the goal, is to be integrated. And the other thing is, when we're integrated, we're trustworthy. We're what you see is what you get. There, when you're with someone who's integrated, you walk away and you're like, you're not second guessing. Oh, did I offend them? Oh, when they said that, did they really mean this? You're not doing that because you're with someone who's so real and you just feel it. You feel relaxed. You feel at ease. You trust them. And that is really the goal, to become an integrated person, and then to help our children become integrated people. Because what makes us disintegrate is shame. That's what causes that. So if we can raise our children just to be human, and if we can go first by learning to be human and expect ourselves only to be human, that's going to undo the shame that causes us to integrate.
I love that so much. Yes. And that feeling, just listening to you talk about being a fully integrated person, that just feels like I want to be around that all the time. Just knowing who you are, showing up who you are, and being able to trust that. I love that. So, where can the listeners find you?
Yeah, so my podcast is at anywhere you find your podcast, but it's Angry at the Right Things. And I think I have 18 episodes right now. So it's 18 hours of me speaking basically with my co-host Katie. I don't do interviews, so it's just a lot of this kind of stuff. But Katie helps slow me down like you're helping me do. I can kind of talk a mile a minute. And then I do the exercises with her. And the whole goal is for the listener to be able to do them for themselves. So this is really a podcast for anyone who either wants to bypass therapy or doesn't feel like they have a good enough therapist, but also for people who want to go into the therapy world. I didn't know what I was doing when I started out. And it's also for therapists who want to learn more as well.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's a great way to learn some of these exercises you kind of talked about today or demonstrated even. Sounds like you can get some of that just from your podcast.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, is there anything you want to leave us with before we go?
I just want to say that when we are true to ourselves, I used to think that was sounded selfish. And now I'm like, wow, it's actually a win-win. When we are learn to be true to ourselves, we win and everyone around us win. So it's the opposite of selfish.
Mm.
And we feel alive. And when we're alive, people around us feel more alive in our company, and we can bring them comfort and joy. So it's a win-win.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I learned so much. What can I say? I learned so much and I had my own therapy session. So thank you for taking the time and doing that for me.
Yes, you're welcome. Thanks for having me, Lisa.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. It was so nice to have Bronwyn just teach us something new about our bodies. Feel free to check out the show notes for links for her podcast and keep learning some of these techniques that she offers. And remember, keep carving out time for yourself because you matter.